A stepmother wishing to eat the lungs and liver of her stepdaughter, birds pecking out the eyes of two sisters after they cut off part of their feet in deception, and a girl gets her tongue cut off in exchange for feeling like she's walking on lots of sharp knives every time she takes a step. I don't know about you, but these sound more like horror stories than fairy tale bedtime stories to me. But no, I just made reference to Snow White, Cinderella, and the Little Mermaid. Yeah, the movie and the book versions I know from my childhood are a little bit different. Hey everyone, I'm Donna and you're watching Wanted Adventure Living Abroad. Halloween is coming up soon, and so in honor of that, I thought that we'd look at some of the horrifying origins of the lovely happy ending fairy tales we know and love today. Let's start with Cinderella. Now, this story can't be blamed all on the Germans. The first recorded version of this story actually comes from Egypt, way back in the 1st century BCE. After that, there are records of it appearing around Asia too, in Korea, the Philippines, and Japan, for example. The story of Cinderella had already lived a long life with many different twists and turns before first being published in Europe and Italy in 1634. But then it got really popular in 1697 after being published in France, and finally in 1812, the Brothers Grimm added their own special horrifying touch to it, which is what we're going to focus on today, of course. In their version of the story, at the end, when the stepsisters try on the glass slipper, their big feet don't fit. Okay, so far that's the same as the Disney version. But then, to solve the problem, the stepmother, their actual mother, instructs them to cut off part of their feet so they will fit in the shoe. The first stepsister cuts off part of her toes and then, wow, look at that! The shoe magically fits her foot and the prince thinks that he has found the one. It's not until he's actually on the way home that some birdies come and point out that the girl's foot was a bloody mess in the shoe, and then he realizes that he had been tricked. So he goes back the next day, and basically the same thing happens with the other sister, except for instead of cutting off part of her toes, she cuts off part of her heel. Finally, on day 3, he finds Cinderella and they live happily ever after. And at the wedding, those pesky little birds that told Prince Charming about the blood dripping from the sisters' feet, which, he somehow didn't notice. I know they say that love is blind, but come on, really? That blind? That he had to have birds point the blood out to him? Anyway, those birds come back into the story at the end to peck the eyes out of the two stepsisters at the wedding. But not all at once. No, that would be too, humane. They don't peck them out all at once. The birds peck out one eye of each sister at the beginning of the wedding, and then one eye of each sister at the end of the wedding. That would just make for some really awkward wedding photos. Maybe awkward's not the right word, just disgusting wedding photos. Now how about Snow White? So as far as I can tell, the Germans are the only ones entirely responsible for this one. The first recorded history of the story seems to come straight from the Brothers Grimm themselves in 1812. And how is this version different from the goofy, playful one that I and many others grew up reading as a picture book or watching on TV? Well, for one, the evil queen doesn't just want the huntsman to go kill Snow White, but rather she instructs him to return with some of the girl's delicious inner organs so that she can feast on them. And in some versions of the story, the queen is not just the queen and stepmother, but actually Snow White's mother. So, double ew? Triple ew? Just very ew. In the Grimm version, the queen also tries several times to do away with Snow White in some pretty sick ways. Like one time, she gives the girl this beautiful new dress, only to then tie the dress's bodice so tightly that Snow White faints to the floor. But each time, the queen fails until she finally goes for the good old poison apple trick. But as we know, this too ultimately fails, and in the end, Snow White gets the prince. What you might not know, however, is that in the Grimm story, the queen goes to the wedding, and once there, she's caught and forced to put these glowing hot iron shoes onto her feet and then dance for everyone until she dies. So literally, dance until you drop. Literally. And lastly, for today's horror-filled lineup, we've got The Little Mermaid. Now, as I mentioned before, the Germans weren't the only ones writing fairy tales, of course, and they also weren't the only ones whose twisted tales got transformed into lovely little children's books and movies. The Danish author Hans Christian Andersen originally published the story of The Little Mermaid in 1837, and in his version, rather than, magically losing the ability to talk in order to get legs and feet, the mermaid actually lets her tongue get sliced right out of her mouth. And then, instead of being able to happily prance around on those newfound walkers, she's forced to suffer in pain because every step she takes feels as though she's walking on knives that are cutting into her. And at the end, she doesn't even get the guy. Nope, he marries someone else and she turns into sea foam. So yeah, a little different from the movie I grew up with. But interesting. Definitely interesting. So my question for you is, what's your favorite fairy tale? And did you grow up reading the nice, sweet little versions of the fairy tales? Or did you grow up reading the more grim versions? Did you see what I did there? The more grim versions? Yeah, so please let me know in the comments below for your chance to win this record clock from the old background. It's a working clock, and Mr. German Man and I will go through the comments and pick a winner from there. Full contest details in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. And also, for more fun stuff, you can check me out over here on my Twitter and my Facebook page. Until next time, auf Wiedersehen! The Danish author Hans Christian... Ooh, Danish! That makes me hungry. I would like a cheese-filled Danish. That's so disgusting.